Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. My name is Ali Hirji, and from wherever you are joining us, welcome to today's Power Hour. You all know me as lead at both Durham College's AI Hub as well as the Center for Cybersecurity Innovation in the beautiful city of Oshawa in the region of Durham. And my session today is going to be one that, in my history of Power Hours, probably the first of its kind, where we focus a little bit more on the technical aspect of home security and how that translates into good practices within small enterprise and large enterprise as well. Now, many of you have often heard me say this that I'm a big fan of failure for very specific reasons. If you fall down 7 times, it's because you're meant to get up eight. And I add this point to today's session because I think it sets the perfect canvas for what we're about to paint. You see, the path to destruction is not paved by failure, it's paved by complacency. Many a time, I'll find situations where homeowners, for example, will tell me, I locked the front door, everything should be good to go. The technology seems pretty sound. You turned the lock with the key and you kept the key in your pocket. You got the technology on point. But what about the process and the people? What about the fact that there could be somebody else who has that key who could enter the house? What about the fact that you might misplace that key once you've kept it in your pocket? Better yet, what if somebody got hold of that key, copied it, and went through the front door? The idea that we have the front door locked alone leads to a sense of complacency. And my aim for today's session is to trouble that complacency. Everything that you can imagine, as Picasso once said, is real. And every possible way that you can imagine somebody breaking into that facility is probably real. So, welcome to today's show. My guest today joined me from a company that is in need of no introduction. Dare I say, a company that has introduced us to the idea of security in our homes, specifically with our digital practices. The two gentlemen that are joining me today, dare I say again, are two gentlemen that if I ever got trapped in an island, I'd want to be with them because one thing that I can tell you about these two folks, I've only spoken to them for probably 60 minutes of my existence on Earth. Extremely humorous, extremely lighthearted, extremely personable. And if there's one thing that can get through life, it is good humor. Please join me in welcoming Chris and Randall from Kaspersky. Chris and Randall, welcome to the Power Hour.
Thanks,
Hey, thanks
Ali.
for having us.
Now,
Yeah.
yesterday, pleasure to have you folks on board. Now, yesterday when I did my Power Hour, I made mention to my guest from IBM that she's trailblazed through many environments and achieved so much success with the focus on not just looking at the world to study it, but to change it. Tell us a little bit about, and Chris, we'll start with you and then go to Randall. Chris, tell us a little bit about your role at Kaspersky and your progression to this position where you're now studying a lot about what happens within the home environment for security as well as small to medium businesses. Chris, let's start with you and your journey into cybersecurity.
Oh, yeah, I appreciate it, man. I'll try and make it short and succinct, as I think everybody at Kaspersky will tell you I'm a man of many words. But that's why we're in sales. So that's how it works. It all started for me a long time ago. I was in the military, got out, did a lot of years in government contracting, traveled a lot overseas. Security has always been a thing for me, even growing up. Most of my family is military, government employees. We all live here in the Northern Virginia, DC area. And, or we're working in, elected official positions. So kind of grew up with it. Have a lot of family that did a lot of stuff security wise in the military and then moved over to the government. So it's in the blood. And then when I got done with contracting, I noticed that the commercial space was having a lot of people exit the government area and move into kind of like threat intelligence. And the technology was actually awesome. It was really starting to pick up. It was kind of like, I would say, just getting to the point right at the cusp where it was going to begin to, I think, start overtaking what the government could do especially on the OSINT side. So I just kind of pivoted out of government contracting and got more into the commercial space and just really started applying different technologies, doing a lot of OSINT practices. And I don't come from a inherently native cyber background. I got a younger brother who works at Rapid7. That guy's been doing sysadmin stuff for a long time. But my evolution was more from that military background and then moving up. And then just really the application of security in the home. It starts in the home. What do we talk about? The systems that we have, smartphones that we use, the echoes and everything else. It's really become, I'd say, really diverse and complicated over the past. I think we can all agree on that, just the 10 years alone. and the type of data that's flowing through our homes and through our lives and what's being tracked and what's not. So it's been an interesting journey. I'm excited for what the future brings. It's complicated, but it's just going to be a lot of fun. And I think the onus now more than ever is on the individual than it is just on the institution itself, for both those trying to protect and those, trying to do their best to work with those who are trying to protect to maintain some sort of semblance of security.
Chris, putting the I in security and the onus on the person. Thank you so much for that, Chris. And I'll add to that just a little bit slightly, which is you made a statement which, the power hour is synonymous for giving people quotes to put on shirts. Security begins at the home. And that's one which is very philosophically rich and one that I definitely want to unpack a little bit because it says a great deal about Kaspersky's ethos in the marketplace. Chris, as always, thank you for that wonderful introduction. Mr. Randall, it's time to now bring you into the conversation. And I also want to make mention to this, both our guests are joining us from the US. They will not be having a family day long weekend this weekend. But anyways, Randall, while you get back to work on Monday, I will not be responding to any of your emails. Randall, intelligent people can often be very boring, but you've made a living and you've made me laugh when it comes to understanding the world of threat intelligence. Tell us a little bit about your journey into cybersecurity and what brought you to this wonderful firm at Kaspersky.
Thanks, Ali. My journey is a little different. Starting out in my professional career, I actually worked construction for quite a while. And got to a point in my life where I saw folks that were a little older than me, kind of going in for back surgery and shoulder surgery. And that's when I decided, maybe time to start making a living with my mind instead of my body. And that's when I kind of took the skills that I learned in construction and working with the public, helping people, start with a beginning state and reach, within their homes, fully accomplish a vision that they had. And took those skills and initially applied it, with a technology reseller, working with organizations, helping them to accomplish kind of that next level of performance within their organization, leveraging technology. Really enjoyed that, selling everything from, laptops and desktops to, full virtualization, backup systems, security. And after doing that for a while, really started to focus on cybersecurity because of the human element, being locked in that chess match, the good guys against the bad guys. As a kid, I was really into comic books and superheroes. So the idea of working with, real life superheroes that are out there trying to stop, those bad actors in the world started to really appeal to me. So for the last 10 years, that's been my focus, is focusing on cybersecurity, and, the excitement of it just never gets old. Fighting that human opponent, trying to outsmart them before they outsmart you. So really enjoy it, and been with Kaspersky for just a year now. My work anniversary was just a couple of days ago, and it's been a really fun ride.
Fantastic. And I think you've made two very important observations here, which is, again, and I spoke about this in previous power hours, which is that interdisciplinary nature of cybersecurity. With a construction background, but not only being able to construct and work with your hands, the ability to observe, to be not just a technology and a tool user, but somebody who understands people. And as Chris has spoken about, is you need to understand that psychology of the user of digital technology and of the bad actor in order to use the right tools at the right time. There's no one size fits all, and I'm really looking forward to diving deep into the tool set and the tech stack available from the amazing firms and amazing people at Kaspersky. Let's jump into this aspect that Chris spoke about first. Randall, we'll begin with you and then we'll go to Chris. Kaspersky, from as well as I had a laptop in Dubai. Many of you know Dubai as the land of have-nots and have-yachts. I was definitely in the have-nots, but I joke, a nice place to live. I grew up there. When I got my first laptop, the first names that you would hear in antivirus solutions, etc., one of them would be Kaspersky. Beyond just that, can you tell us a little bit about what you're seeing as the common attack vectors that are facing homes specifically in North America?
For common attack vectors, I mean, people talk a lot about malware and things like that. The type of things that if you're running a good antivirus or endpoint solution like Kaspersky's and keep it updated, you're going to be fine. It's a lot of times the code is not the problem. The attack vectors that I've seen, that we've all seen, work more effectively is when the bad actor shifts his attention from the system to the end user.
Yeah.
And that's where we get into things like phishing, smishing, or sending messages through text message, or even just old-fashioned phone calls. Even though I've been in cybersecurity for a while, worked in anti-fraud for a while, actually my 19-year-old son, just a couple of weeks ago, got a call from someone who said he was from his bank and that they were setting up a new peer-to-peer money transfer system, which was true in this case. The bank was launching that, but the person calling was not from the bank. Was able to convince my son to share his credentials. Sure enough, his savings account got cleaned out a couple hours later. Thankfully, the bank had a good anti-fraud program, understood what happened, and they refunded him his money. But it just goes to show, that simple approach of approaching someone and convincing them to hand over some sensitive information can undo the best laid plans of having that solid approach of having a good antivirus or endpoint security solution.
Absolutely. And Randall, I do thank you for being open and sharing this. I mean, you did not need to necessarily bring up personal experience, but I think this speaks to the ethic within Kaspersky, right? The idea that you know what you don't know and you don't know it all, and that willingness to share. That's huge when it comes to, especially for community like mine. So let's say Durham College or any of the other organizations that I work with. When you choose to do business with a security firm, it is important that they stay true to the fact that you're never eliminating security risk. You're just lowering that risk. And I appreciate that honesty and that upfrontness. You've also given me something as a very neat little point in which to bring Chris back into the conversation. You made mention about people, right? And we all know this very well. Hackers will hack systems. The real geniuses will hack people. But Chris, here's the question for you. You can go into a home, and we'll spend about 10 minutes talking about home security before we advance further. You can go into a home environment. You can tell a parent, you can tell a child to put the antivirus solution on. You can give them a stack of Kaspersky full solutions that they can run. Almost these plug it in and forget, or these plug and play like models. But there's more to security than just that. How does Kaspersky address this aspect of the human firewall? Chris?
That's an excellent question. So there's a couple of ways that we address it. We try and do the standard stuff that everybody else does through security awareness as well. We actually just recently, very excited about that, kind of aggregated all of our freemium tools that were available in security lists for folks to use. And then, they can educate themselves. We have some anti-ransom stuff they can also download as well and check and see if they're, if they've been popped or not. And, I think it really, at the end of the day, though, it starts with education for Kaspersky. We try and stay abreast of what's going on. Almost a third of our company is dedicated to research. And that's saying a lot. We're still privately held, we're not publicly owned, so we can take those assets and those resources and point them accordingly straight towards the tech. We've got a unique footprint, I would say, across parts of the globe where a lot of this stuff is just day-to-day practice, right? Like the US, for the most part, has a pretty good tech infrastructure in place. There's obviously a lot of money to be made here if you're a bad guy, especially when you're fishing for people. And that's applicable for the rest of the world over too. But as things become more digital, Kaspersky's prepared to meet that between our endpoint products that we have. You've got, the Safe Kids stuff you can download for the kids' phones and stuff like that. And, some people find that sort of stuff invasive, but I'm a parent. I have 4 children, 2 of which are teenagers and 2 that are younger. So, that kind of stuff is important to me, right? To be able, and it's not a monitoring thing. I'm not trying to keep abreast of what they're doing on, but, but it is important to me that, when you give them a phone or you give them a computer, obviously, and this, we all grew up with computers. And I think our generation is actually pretty unique in that perspective as well, because I remember being a young kid and there being no tech. Now, my dad was a programmer. So I remember also growing up with computers, back when you're playing sock with camel and you're banging out, C++ language and all that fun stuff as well to write the little, stick figure that does the dance or whatever. But, a lot of people didn't grow up like that. Our kids grew up with smartphones. Like that's all they know. So like that, and that access to the internet, the ability to go in and ingest whatever they want, to find whatever they want, the verification process that we kind of have inherently by, trust but verify, they don't, right? Like if there's an image and there's something behind it, if there's content that's available, they trust it, especially if their friends are recommending it, right? So you've got to kind of be careful and take as many precautions as you can, not only to educate them yourself and what you do, and what's out there, and just kind of the dangers of moving through things. And my kids are awesome. Like they get every once in a while they get an SMS fish or whatever. They know to take a snapshot and they send me the link so I can research it and figure it out. So we got that on. Even my wife, who's not that great with technology, does the same thing. So it really starts with education and products that we have. But we have Kaspersky antivirus here in our home as well. And we run all of that. I've got the Safe Kids apps on their phones and stuff like that. And for me, it's about the education side of things, directing them to recent articles of what's happening, and just reminding them, like, your friends are out there. Security is strange because it's the second thought, right? Between what's actually going to happen. The first endeavor is engagement, right? Getting people engaged in your technology, getting them immersed, making it a part of their lives so they stay, because, especially if they're the product, and just remind them of that, like you are the products. Exactly. Yeah. We all know that very well. So taking those proper precautions, but then bringing in certain tools to help automate most of that danger away from them is critical, right? We've all got to do it, especially now that we're working at home. I mean, attack vectors are larger and more complicated as ever. Businesses are trying to figure out, IT teams are overworked and overwhelmed, but trying to make sure that, people's Wi-Fi settings, router settings are where they're supposed to be. It's kind of sad, but the good news is, I think the silver lining in this, when I'm looking at this overall, is that we as a globe, we're eventually going to start taking that, I'd say, giant step more into a more technologically diverse world anyways. And, 5G is coming and people are just plugged in. So I'm actually kind of glad that COVID happened the way that it did. If you take my meaning, because it really pushed a lot of companies, a lot of people forward, especially from the home environment. It's like, okay, well, now we're not going to talk about it anymore. You actually have to do it. And so a lot of people, there's a steep learning curve, but you can either sink or swim. And I think that's beneficial to everybody, especially in this environment, because it's only going to get faster. It's only going to get more complicated. So, reaching out and understanding who's out there to help ease that burden from you. It's, your home is, whoever's security conscious or whatever, you've got your alarm systems and everything else. So automating as much of that security process as possible with a trusted vendor that's going to take care of you and, make sure that everything's staying as far away as it can. Is a critical piece of moving forward. So I'm kind of glad this happened, because I think that's, it's a good lesson for a lot of folks, and hopefully they're taking notes and doing what they can.
No, absolutely. And I think, a statement that I'm very well known for saying at the college, and if I have any of my graduate students listening, but I have a lot of my colleagues on different boards listening, we have about 65 viewers on, I always say, get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And I think the comments that you've made elucidate exactly that. But I will say this, gentlemen, on a lighter note, Chris and Randall. The Chris and Randall fan club is in shock right now. Randall mentioned he had a 19-year-old son, but he's 21 himself. So there's his And then Chris mentioned he's got 4 kids, when all we thought Chris is 16. What is going on here? Also, Chris, if you do end up sleeping in the garage tonight, I know why your wife threw you there, because of that technology problem. We'll deal with that later on. 1 or 2 questions have come in, so thank you for those questions. I'll read them in. And for those of you who are watching, thanks to the Kaspersky team. We've got some cool data sets that are showing on the cyberexchange.ca environment. Nishma and Greg and Tanya as well from Kaspersky are online right now. Friend them on CyberExchange and chat with them if you just need resources or you'd like to talk to them as well. Time's flying by, and I'm going to start jumping into your questions very shortly. But Randall, let's come back to you. One of the things that I always remind my teams, or when I think about environments around security, is that you need to look at data. Data is not about the numbers. Data is about unlocking the insights within that data. In a home-like environment, when you are aware of potential threats, for example, the web camera getting hijacked, or you're aware of the Internet of Threats and the Internet of Things and all of those other devices that you have in your home, how can Kaspersky help the layperson at home understand some of these threats? Do you have dashboards that people can look at? Do you have some sort of visualizations that someone with a non-techie background can look at and say, I understand what's going on here, and I understand how Kaspersky's protecting us? Randall?
We do have those types of things built into our solutions, but I think even more importantly, we focus on telling stories, through social media, through different documentary series that we do, within on YouTube. But focusing on social media, if someone was to follow Kaspersky, they're going to see some specific articles, several a week, come out that will talk about some of the challenges that we as homeowners or consumers who use technology may come across. Things like privacy issues. Beyond just the hacking, the privacy issues, things like stalkerware. Different applications that could be on our phone that someone, if we had a difficult relationship, would be able to actually track our movements and follow our whereabouts. Very dangerous stuff that most people aren't aware of. Things like in the gamer community, working with them to understand why you should really stay away from pirated software and the challenges that are there, and how hackers are really going after, sorry about that with the phone, going after the gaming community. And even things like, with Valentine's Day coming up this weekend,
Yep.
I checked our blog this morning, and we had a nice article on, how to safely use dating applications, and different precautions that you can take there. So our team does a really nice job keeping those posts topical, and the stories very human, and we interject humor into just about everything that we do as a company. If anyone's seen our mascot, the big green bear, Midori Kumo, we take a lighthearted approach to something that a lot of people see as scary, that of protecting ourselves from those bad actors, because we focus on really what technology can unlock for us, and figure out ways to just do that safer, build a safer world without holding back from all that technology can really do for us.
Absolutely. And listen, Randall, not only are you spewing wisdom to protect the world, you're spewing wisdom to protect my life, because you just reminded me it's Valentine's Day and I actually forgot. So thank you, Randall. I thank all the gods that I know for you coming into my life. Thank you so much. But you've raised another very important point, and that is security is not just about how you do it, it's how you talk about it and how you engage about it. And this is something that is synonymous with the Kaspersky brand, and something that I relate to a great deal. This isn't about working with a closed door, it's about having the door open. And as I said in my power hour yesterday, secret to success is that there are no secrets, but you got to know how to share and share correctly. So Randall, thank you for this, because this opens up a new level of discussion. And this goes into this aspect of, sure, you've got all the Kaspersky tool sets. If you go onto the website, and links are popping up on the Cyber Exchange feed right now, go onto the website, whether in your home environment, whether you're a small business, there are a lot of products that you can plug and play, you can buy, and you can run. However, then comes that moment when there's the large enterprise moment, and then comes the moment of this question, which I'm going to let into the room, which is this question on the home or small business also faces moments when incidents happen, and they need to respond to that incident. Chris, let's start with you. Does Kaspersky play a role in that incident response lifecycle, or is it more that protective layer once penetrated, either because of the technology or because of the people or because of the process, Kaspersky's role is done there? Can you tell us more about Kaspersky's lifecycle in the cybersecurity posture of, let's say, a small business when an incident happens?
Oh man, that's a great question. And I actually do have a good answer for you, believe it or not. So the answer is we're always there. We have a robust help desk that's online 24/7. People can write in, they can ask questions, they can call in and get somebody that's actually knowledgeable from Kaspersky on the phone or on the horn or on the chat and talk to them about that. Let me give you a little anecdote here which absolutely just it literally warms my heart. In my mind, being the CTI guy that I am, it was the story of 2020. So we actually had a sales request come in. I don't know how it ended up in the sales bucket, but it did. And literally what happened was it was a small company that builds websites, and for some reason, effective as of like 10:15 that morning, they were in central US, they were not able to get to the most recently built website for one of their larger clients. The client had paid a lot of money, and they couldn't figure out why. And the reason why was because they had our AV running. They also had our endpoint system in place, but the AV wouldn't let them get to the website. So like I said, I don't know how he got routed to the sales bucket side of things, but he did. And it was fortuitous for, I think, everybody involved. So anyways, my one of the guys I worked with, Doug, phenomenal guy, like reached out and said, hey man, I've got this weird thing, check it out. And he sent it to me and I'm like, let's call this guy. Let's help him out. You know, the CTI guy was like, let's wrap some context around it, see what we're dealing with. And so we called him up and we did. We literally walked him through everything, and he basically let us know what was happening. So what we did is, you know, we kind of pulled up our threat intelligence tools, and I pulled up virus total as well, and kind of like got on the horn live with him. We kind of walked him through what we were seeing, right? Like I can only give you the context of what we can see, than what virus total was showing as well. And he's not a security guy, right? He builds websites for a living, but he understands the fact that, you know, something was wrong. So as it turns out, there was a PNG file and like a text file that was being hosted that somewhere along the way within the past 24 hours had gotten popped, and people were downloading them, right? They literally, we walked them through it. I showed them where, you know, the IP and everything else that was known association back to it, walked them through it on our threat intelligence platform. And, you know, he just came back and was like, all right, cool. I think I got it. Give me like a couple of minutes. And I was like, dude, we're right here. Call us back. You know, we'll keep the meeting up, keep working, and you pop back in as needed. So 15 minutes later, he came back and he said, all right, I pulled everything down. We replaced it. I think we're good. Let me run it again. How long is it going to take? And I said, well, our stuff should kick in usually within about 5 to 10 minutes. It updates about every 10 minutes. And sure enough, he was able to go back to the website. Everything was clean. We got it rocking and rolling. He just, you know, thanked us exclusively. It was like, man, this is why I have you guys as AV. And I was like, man, I can't thank you enough. I was like, first of all, you took the boredom out of my morning, because this was fun chasing this thing down. It's like, and secondly, it's a really good example to show you, like, you know, how we can protect small businesses effectively. You know, and I once again, I don't know how you got routed the sales bucket, but I'm glad you did, because usually the way you're supposed to go is you'd get online with somebody who would have done the same thing we did for him. You know, just kind of walk them through the process, see what was going on, and then tell them, you know, how to fix it. But I think it's my favorite story from 2020. You know, and obviously they're renewing their subscription come this year, so it's always a good story to tell. But that's I think a pretty good description of how we try and help people. You can ask anything, send an email, spin up the chat, see what's going on. You know, we're always ready and available and happy to help.
And I can certainly attest to that, not just as a product user of Kaspersky. And again, true with the cybersecurity individual, I'm not going to share my entire tech stack with everybody around the world, but as a user and an avid user of Kaspersky and somebody who subscribes to a lot of the reports, I can tell that it's not just about how you do security, how you talk about it, but more importantly than that, there's a very big distinction between engaging with a vendor and engaging with a partner. And, you know, in my discussions with the Kaspersky team, whether it's been with Nishma, whether it's been with Tanya, the rest of the team as well, the key thing about them is that they'll draw the line when they know what they do not know. When there's a point where I don't know what I'm talking about here, but I will route you to the right person, that is extremely important, because often we face this with the vendor community, is that urge and that pulse to sell. And the kindness and the humility that we get from the Kaspersky team is par excellence. So I commend you for that. I also think that you're absolutely right. It's sometimes just that little spark that sets off the flame. And that little mistake turned out to be the source of success. Routed to sales and then back to you makes a huge, huge difference. So a little spark set off that flame. And keeping that flame going, I'm going to run back to Randall, wherever he is in the United States. And I want to talk to you a little bit about this aspect about all these moving parts. Now, we just listened to what Chris had to say, and there are so many moving parts. I'm a big fan of the fewer the moving parts, the better. But there's so much to think about when you think about security, and we'll unpack the home a little bit more, but there's a lot to think about in the enterprise space. How does Kaspersky, or rather even you, how do you rationalize prioritization when it comes to security posture? Do we attack identity access management first? Do we attack integrations and how our APIs are running calls? How do you prioritize what you should be going after first? Randall?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And what we generally tell people, and we focus this around kind of the consumption and leverage of threat intelligence, really understanding the threat landscape, and not just getting the, let's say, the headline of what the scariest threat is out there right now. What is everybody running away from? Because there can be a lot of just fear, uncertainty, and doubt out there when it comes to what what the real risk around these threats are. And that can apply, to the home and the enterprise. But when we're talking to our enterprise customers, the first thing we tell them, when they're trying to prioritize, what should they truly be concerned about is, know yourself, understand, what type of organization you are, what your industry is and where you are within that industry. Understand the intelligence that you can gather from your own systems. What do you actually look like? And then look for the areas where you need more context. And that's when, the consumption of real threat intelligence, finished reporting that puts the threat landscape into context can be really helpful. Because if okay, I'm in this industry, there are threat actors approaching this industry in such a way, leveraging these vulnerabilities. And because of my size and the prestige in the market, I'm probably going to be that tier A as far as what the threat actors are going. If you understand the techniques that they're using, the tools that they're using, you can protect yourself and make sure that those vulnerabilities are taken care of. So, that idea of understanding who you are and understanding the threats out there and seeing the context of what truly applies to you and what is, something else that people are just trying to hype up to get you scared and sell you something. That's what we really look to do, because, I've always found that, when you approach technology, you can try and sell out of fear, but you're not going to develop long-standing relationships with your customers if you take that approach. If every time you talk to me, I was working hard to scare you, you wouldn't talk to me very often, maybe just around Halloween. So we try and take the approach of understanding what people are trying to do with their technology and help them mitigate the risk.
Randall, you don't scare me, man. You educate me, you empower me with knowledge. You make me smarter every day. You're the reason I have a job and I teach in this industry. But anyway, Randall, thank you for that. Guys, we've got about 26 more minutes left and a few questions have come in. Nicholas, thank you for your question. Manoj, thank you for yours as well. I will get to it very shortly. There was one question that actually came to me by a direct message on Twitter. Chris, I'll go to you and then I'll come back to Randall. Chris, and this question, and I expected this to come out, and you've probably heard of this term, which is called knowledge translation, right? And it's this idea, especially in academia, where you take a technical concept and you bring it into bite-sized chunks that people can understand. So for example, how do you talk cybersecurity to somebody who's studying kinesiology? How do you talk cybersecurity to a personal support worker? Can you tell me a little bit about some of the techniques you use to make cybersecurity concepts very digestible? And I think this is a real compliment to both of you. And Chris, coming to you is because you have this ability to make things relatable. When I talk about cloud environments, sometimes I tell my students, it's not like Netflix has rented a bunch of DVD players and like, okay, Ali wants to watch this, play. There's automation that goes into this. There's a technology in this. What's some of those skill sets that's made you so proficient in making cybersecurity so relatable?
Oh man, talk about coming to the right guy. So I've had a few old bosses in the past, and rightfully so, and my friends. I have a saying I've grown up with. If Chris Davis can do it, anybody can do it, right? If I can wrap my head around it and take it on, and anybody can do it, and that has a lot to do. Like, I'm a big fan of simplicity. I understand that there are things that are highly complex that only certain people can understand. And really, at the end of the day, that goes back to your trust factor. Just some things like I don't understand rocket science. Elon's a smart guy, right? Obviously, he's doing good things, so I'm going to go ahead and trust him to go ahead and do that. And the people he hires, right? My brother-in-law works for SpaceX. He's a wicked smart guy, way smarter than I am. So when he says something about something, particularly in his field, I'm like, yeah, we'll take note of that. So you go back to that trust factor, but breaking things down as simplistically as possible is critical. I think that's why Apple's been as successful as they are, right? Everybody can attest to that over the past couple of years, right? They had a very simple motto: if you can't get to it in 3 clicks, done. Get it out. Make it intuitive. Make it picture. I've got my youngest son has special needs. He's got Down syndrome. It's a great analogy there for you. And he that little guy, he's 7 years old, man. He's been tearing his way around an iPad since he was 2. Right. And it's not that he's, I would say, any less smarter than anybody else. I'm not implying that. My point is that if a 2-year-old can rip their way around an iPad and figure out what they want to do, you're doing it correctly. Now, We bought him one of those little Fire tablets, and we bought him an Android too. And those are sick collecting dust, because they're just not intuitive enough at the end of the day, unfortunately. Like he knows exactly what his pattern is. He follows his pattern to get to what he needs to. And security is the same. You've really got to break it off into bite-sized chunks. It really ticks me off when you hear people talk about, how complicated security can be, and, oh, I don't need to pay attention to that. And reality is now you do. Technology is everywhere. It's how you engage with everything. It's just what we use to engage ourselves with the world around us, right? And how many hours do you spend breaking out your finances, figuring out what car you need to buy, figuring out what kind of investments you need to be investing in, all of that sort of stuff, right? What's going on in the world around you. You specialize with your job. You know a lot about your job. You have to your industry to make yourself more marketable in either the product that you're selling or the services that you're selling. The same concept, right? So if you're going in and trying to break it down for somebody as to why they need this or why they need you to come in, you have to do the same thing with security, right? You don't have to understand the nuances of it from a technical perspective, but you do have to understand the overarching concept of it, and it has to be broken down. I tell all my kids, because they're going into college soon. I got one that's headed there in the fall. She's got a huge creative streak, right? But I tell them, like, listen, you need to go. There's lots of things you can do inside of the marketing space as well. But let's be honest, people are hiring people inside of cybersecurity and coders. And the way your world is going, by the time you're my age, everything's going to be code at that point. Like it'll be simplified, of course, but it's the way the engagements are going. So get yourself that solid foundation first, then, bring your passion to bear on top of that and figure it out. But you got to have those solid foundations. We are past the point, unfortunately, where you can just continue to allow people to be ignorant about things. You have to educate yourself. If you're out there, still trying to figure out how to, click the forward button on your email, my friend, there's a rack of knowledge out there that's free. Go out there, make yourself better, improve yourself. Man, I had an old boss back in my government contracting days. Literally the only thing the guy knew how to do with computers, and he was a VP, was push the forward button. So he'd come in and he'd ask you a question, you draft your email, and he'd push the forward button to the client and then respond back to the client. And I'm like, man, in 8 years, you're going to be absolutely obsolete because, the world's changing. You got to figure it out. And he was smart. He just hired smart enough people around him who kind of worked with him to enable his handicap there. But we're past that point. And if it's hard, my work with the soft communities taught me a lot of things, right? There's two things that they teach you, right? The first thing is, thou hast not to like it, thou hast just to do it. That's step number one, right? It's one of the spec work commandments or whatever. The second thing is like, obviously we all know this, right? You don't eat an elephant right away. It's one bite at a time. Journey is one step at a time. So set a goal for yourself, start to do your research, bring it in, and just keep taking those steps. Wake up every day and get 1% better. And before you know it, you'll be a lot more knowledgeable than you were before. But it's critical. It has to be done. You can't sit on it anymore. The world's moving too quickly.
What did I tell everybody when I was booking this power hour? Chris David is like Socrates on liquid, dropping knowledge like no tomorrow. Chris, that was so eloquently put. And again, it's a testament to Kaspersky's commitment to making cybersecurity that much more digestible. I totally relate with you, both on a humorous level, but also just on a very serious level, is that I still, hopefully they're not listening because I don't think they would know how to log on to this platform. But I still have individuals who message me, and it's, and this is a metaphor, of course, it's almost as if they're asking me, why can't I use Netscape Navigator to browse the internet? Or why can't I log on to MSN Messenger right now? Yeah, the world has changed significantly, and a lot has moved on from our ICQ days. But point noted, and you have, not only do you need to know for yourself, but you need to surround yourself with the right people. So when you said, how do you budget, how do you decide which car to buy, how do you decide what to put aside for vacations? I have a CFO, which is my wife, who manages all of that. But the point is, you surround yourself with the right people. Speaking about people, I'm going to weave in another question that's coming from Nicholas. And Randall, this is for you. I commend you for the fact that your philosophy is not, hey, this is, the fear of loss. It's about helping them lose their fear about security to begin with and empowering organizations. However, let's call a spade and keep it real in that certain sectors, especially in lieu of the pandemic, especially supply chain, has seen a growth and a very huge impetus on new cybersecurity attacks hitting supply chain sector. Would you agree with that? That as a result of COVID-19, the supply chain environment is particularly more vulnerable and attractive to bad actors?
I would say yes. And, obviously when we look at, the supply chain attacks that have been in the news recently, um, that's an attractive spot for bad actors to go after. But when you look at those attacks, the bad actors have been going after that for years,
Yeah.
those supply chain attacks. When you look at the dwell time of those attacks, they were in those environments, looking around, poking around, planning this out for an extended period of time. The advantage we have now is we understand what a valuable attack vector that is, and we understand how they went about this attack. We've learned from it, and we're making adjustments. And yeah, actually, next week we're having a webinar where we're having a talk on that subject and talking about how, because of this focus on supply chain, the things that large enterprise used to just need to be focused on now applies to the smaller mid-market customers who
Yep.
are part of that large enterprise's supply chain. Like I was speaking about earlier, needing to know yourself and your place within the industry and understanding what the likelihood of you getting a certain attack to targeted at your organization. That was the talk track that we were having, 3-4 months ago. Now you have to add a layer of, okay, not only do you have to understand where you stand in that target list, but all the other corporations that you interact with, the ones that supply you and the ones you're supplying. So it adds a layer of complexity to it, but the same basic principles of looking at the fully researched intelligence and gleaning the insights of context. It just means that more organizations have to take up that practice. But in the end, we're all going to be, better defended and in better cybersecurity postures because of that.
Absolutely. And I think, for our audience that's listening, there's a resource center available at the Kaspersky site, which I highly recommend you take a look at, because a lot of interesting pieces there, very updated, very easy to read, some longer, some shorter, and you can get links to some of the other webinars as well. I will make sure that Team CyberX via social media and Cyber Exchange posts a link to that webinar as well, because absolutely, when you think about supply chain, I actually make the position of what isn't supply chain to begin with. Everything has a particular pattern and process that we need to follow, and a system of delivery that empowers it. So supply chain is almost in everything that we do. So highly recommend you check out the webinar with the fine team from Kaspersky. We've got about 12 minutes left, gentlemen, and 2 more questions have come in before we then find our way and make it to our weekend. Chris, I'll come to you, and this is on the subject of on sharing, and more importantly, on communications. One of the illusions of communications is believing that it actually happened, but it didn't. How do you sort of engage with your users for them to share back experiences with you? There may be blind spots that your product may not pick up. There may be blind spots that your threat intel may not pick up. What's the sharing mechanism between Kaspersky's research and the users of their products in the wider community?
Oh, excellent question. So obviously we have a large component of our company that actually is engaged with research. I mean, our threat intelligence powers everything that we do, right? It's my favorite term is it's the lifeblood of all of our products, right? Which is why I find it so fascinating. So engaging, especially at the enterprise level all the way down, you do have research teams that can do certain things, but we really value that one-to-one relationship. So our larger customers, especially, if they are engaged with, let's just say APT reports as a service that they can do, they do have access to those research teams, the ability to reach out, share information. Most of these folks, anyways, let's be honest, they're already in the same groups online, right? Like there's communities all over the globe, and they all know each other, anyways, for the most part. So that's really not a hurdle, I think, or what I would call like a big obstacle they have to overcome. Half the time, once they find out who's actually on the otother side of the wall, they're like, "Oh man, Chris, yeah, I know that guy. He's an idiot. Don't want to deal with him." No, but it's but that aside, you get on and figure all of that out. So we don't really have that challenge. I don't think. As a matter of fact, I would say that we rely on very threat intelligence driven, I would say kind of like engagement here at Kaspersky. So a lot of times, we do reach back out to the research team and say, hey, we're talking to so-and-so, this is what they're dealing with. Obviously what do you guys know? And I mean, ask Randy, 99% of the time, it's like, oh yeah, I know Tim over there. Hold on, let me check something out. And they'll come back to us and let us know, okay, this is what they're really looking for. This is, yeah. And then, they help kind of sort the deck and, just get everybody, which is great. There's no ego here. Everybody just kind of works together to try and help each other out. So, what we may have originally thought they needed may have been it. Maybe it's missing something. Maybe we were totally off, right? So we just kind of bring the conversation back to center. And it's from that engagement, right? That tribe, that community that's built, and the trust that's placed as well. That communication is critical. You know that. I mean, you teach college. It's the student thing, right? Like, what do I have to do to get engaged? And is what I'm being fed proper? And more importantly, can I use it to my advantage to get ahead? And I'm not doing that by reading something. I'm reading it, but more importantly, that trusted confidant, those people, that group, that tribe that I work with, who are stuck in the same mission, the same endeavor. That's where the bona fides comes in, and we kind of take it from there.
I think you raised some very, very important points here, and I think it's the sharing piece, but also I'll throw in a little quick fact that so many of you may know, and I know that you're based in the States, but you've got a lot of Canadian counterparts here in Canada. One of the leading hiring firms is the Phelps Group that has often been a sponsor of CyberX and Cyber Exchange events, and they're spinning out a new practice in cybersecurity called Phelps Cybersecurity, and their top priority for them is when they talk about the skill sets in cybersecurity professionals, they talk a lot about the fact that you'll hire for skill, but you'll fire for fit. And one of the major issues around fit tends to be around communications.
Yeah.
Inability to communicate, inability to share timely information and sharing it correctly as well. Saying enough for one person to know what they need to know. And I think that's crucial here. Number two is the openness. I invite anybody on social media or going directly to the Kaspersky website is drop a note there, drop a suggestion there, and see that feedback loop and how that works. It is truly quite phenomenal. So again, kudos to you to maintaining that feedback loop, that openness, because you well and truly only learn when somebody's able to give you constructive criticism, constructive feedback. And often companies have walls, which I really feel are broken down when you engage with Kaspersky. So Chris, thank you for that. A couple of more minutes left. And Randall, a question that's coming for you. A little similar to a previous question, but I'll add a little bit of my masala and make it a little more spicy than what happened asked. And this is, it's very important to keep the most important things first, right? That's the most important thing. The most important thing needs to be first. When you think about things like the SolarWinds attack, so on and so forth, how did this impact your side? A, did it impact any of the work within Kaspersky? But B, how did this impact the way you were creating priorities for different companies when it comes to their security posture? Right?
It's a really good question. And I think it comes down to just kind of broadening the way we think about the threat landscape and kind of looking at implications and impacts, 1 or 2 or 3 degrees further out, because that idea of attacking supply chain and kind of going through those vulnerabilities, the length of time and the chess match that the threat actors are putting together.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that's kind of where I would place my metaphor for this. I think sometimes we aren't as forward looking as a chess master who's looking 5, 6, 7, 8, a dozen moves ahead and planning out a strategy and looking and understanding his opponent's strategy and how many moves ahead his opponent is thinking. And sometimes, especially if either your crown jewels or the crown jewels of the organization that your organization serves is of that high value, you have to be taking that chess-like approach.
Mm-hmm.
And now that we're aware of how extensive that supply chain attack was, more and more organizations that have been, more of the mindset of playing checkers with cybersecurity, have to graduate and start playing chess. And, it aligns with our strategy when it comes to threat intelligence. When Chris was talking about the community that, is actively sharing information, we see that really strong up in the kind of Fortune 100, Fortune 200 organizations. But as you get down into slightly smaller organizations, they're not as active within that community. And, the community, is very accepting. They're looking to share information and help as much as possible. They're looking to expand the conversation to these smaller organizations. So, in a lot of ways, what we're seeing in the threat landscape and what we were trying to do in extending, the power of this intelligence to smaller organizations, I think now they understand how valuable it is. And, true, we are a threat intelligence vendor. We do have premium things that we sell when it comes to threat intelligence. But for organizations who are just getting started out, we have our open tip that we extend out to anybody. We have our blog posts that produce finished research that we're extending out to the community for free. So, for a lot of organizations, there's ways that we can help you get up to speed and protect not only yourself but those you serve. Through these free offers, knowing that if we're providing value to an organization, just out of wanting to build a safer world, we know that when they're in a position to build a commercial relationship with us, they will, because it'll make sense. So help first, and the commercial relationship will follow.
Time and tide will settle all, absolutely. And again, that perspective and that philosophy. One of the things that my colleagues on the Cyber Exchange board, and also on the Women in Cyber board, Mark Dillon, Vice President of IT at Waterloo Hydro, he really values the relationship with the vendor, but what I like to call partner community. And it's when people have approaches like this, not everyone has that philosophy, which is guide them to to what they need to know. And when the time is right, you will reap the returns from it financially. Let's face it. You've got threat intel records, you've got products out there, you have to make money. But there's a way to do that. And I think I really admire that philosophy and approach that you take. It says a lot, again, about you and the company philosophy as well. So thank you for that. We've got about 3 to 4 minutes left. 2 questions. I'm going to race through them, and then we'll come to our soft landing. And Chris, this goes to you, right? I think Mark Twain once said, right, that if you tell the truth, you don't have to remember anything. Okay.
Yep.
Have you ever been in a situation where, hey, we didn't see this coming, and we got to figure it out, what this particular attack was? Have you ever found yourself in that situation?
Hundreds of times. Absolutely. Yeah. And the reality is it goes back to ego, right? Like I'm not one of the person, and it's shared by many. But you find a lot of people that they get personally, I think, attacked, when something they've built crumbles, and I've always been a resiliency guy. A lot of other people has as well. It's kind of like my mantra. So if something goes wrong, first of all, it's going to go wrong. With Mike Tyson, everyone has a plan till they get punched in the face, right? And that's true. You see, and you find out real quickly, like even back in the contracting days, when things happened and things went sideways and it got a little hot. I mean, you could actually figure out pretty quickly who was one of those people who was inherently built to react and survive in chaos, and who froze, right? And a lot of people froze. You would be surprised who froze. Same concept, So the answer is yes. If something happens, and we don't have a plan for it, or we didn't plan for it, the first thing you could do is just owe up to it. Hey, look, this happened. We'll figure out how it happened, but first thing we got to do is stop this hemorrhaging, apply first aid and just get to the root of the problem so we don't experience, and then we'll worry about what we can do to build out to make sure it doesn't happen again. But, first and all, this is on me. I take the hit for it, so we don't have any finger pointing. I hate that talk. Like, just get out. I'll take the hit. It's on me. But let's work together moving forward to figure out how we can work as a team to get through this, because we've got to get out of the kill zone, right? We've got to move past this. I wish that attitude was adopted by more people. It's starting to become more adopted as more and more people leave the government and enter the commercial space, the security side. But that's the critical part of it, man. So yes, own up to what happened. Take the hit for it. I don't care if it's your fault or not. Just take the hit for it. And then, see what you need to do to bring everybody together to work to move forward and get past it, because it's going to happen again, right? Let's just get over that. Everybody, this whole thing, we pay it so much lip service in this industry. It kills me. Like, it's not a matter of if, but when. And unfortunately, for 98% of the people out there, the when is now, right? Like, it's happening now. You're just not aware of it. So what can we do to continue to build resiliency and work together as a community? And that comes with checking that ego at the door and bringing your folks together to move past.
My mantra after this talk is Chris and Randall for president. Presidents of the world. That's it. Gentlemen, we're coming short on time, and I know you have other places to be. I'm actually giving a keynote after this as well. So I'm going to bring us to a landing, and we're going to have, at least 3 more power hours. To those that are watching, this is the awesome team from Kaspersky. A shout out to Nishma and Tanya for making this happen and trusting me with this session. I hope you can see exactly why I was really looking forward to host your team. Heard so much great stuff in the industry. I've never got to meet them in person. I know I will at a future CyberX event, but I really, really, really thank you for this exchange. We've got about a minute more, and I want to get our audience to know a little bit more about you. Chris, you know what? I agree with you is that the day you're truly clever is the day you realize you're not as clever as you thought, and that's so important. With that, I want to ask you, Randall, first starting with you, is there one book or movie that personifies the humble and kind approach and smart approach that you have?
And that's a
Good question.
That's a good question. Hard to narrow it down to one. I think about a year and a half ago, I read a book called The Happiness Advantage by Sean Aker. He's a Harvard professor, studies positive psychology. And the question he wanted to answer was, does happiness come from success, or does happiness lead to success? And an interesting thing about his studies is he launched his research during the financial crisis of 2008, studying organizations that were in finance. So if you want to study happiness, why not pick one of the saddest times in that industry? So fascinating book, and the principles he lays out of positive thinking beyond just kind of an emotional approach to it, but the reasons to be positive and what positivity leads to. It was life-changing, so highly recommend it.
Same question to you, Chris, 30 seconds.
30 seconds, man. Staring Down the Wolf by Mark Devine, Commander Mark Devine. Phenomenal book. Guys, Mark Devine is a very well-known instructor and teacher throughout the world. He's a former Navy SEAL commander, just solid guy. And what that book taught me, because I had my own issues with my own challenges, right? It teaches you how to rise above yourself, like basically how to begin changing your way of thinking and your way of acting around life. So you're concerned more about like the final picture, like that fifth level, right? Like, how is this going to fit? Is this good for everyone? And, if so, what is my role in that? And then you bite down on that humility cookie and you accept your role and you give it all in that role, because you can't do everything and you can't take the credit for everything. So be a team player, and just be there, be present, give it your all, and just accept the fact that there's goodness coming out of it and that you attract like-minded individuals and you take the hill.
Some serious wisdom being dropped there. Too serious for a Friday. I'd say going on that then, I would say for me, it's Homer Simpson in that moment when he's introduced to the internet. And that moment when people come to his home and he says, "Welcome to the internet, how can I help you?" Because that well and truly is what it is. It's not some cloud somewhere. It's somebody else's computer. It's somebody else's device. Somebody's talking to you from some setup somewhere. And that philosophically was very important to me. Gentlemen, I'm going to ask you to stay on for another 30 seconds so I can close the session and we can say our goodbyes in the green room. I want to thank the team from Kaspersky again. You're going to be hearing more from the Kaspersky team at the Canadian Women in Cybersecurity Conference and other conferences through 2021. As a member of the board and on behalf of our chair, Kat Kool, on behalf of our co-chairs, Shelly Walk-Martin and Rishmi Hisham, and everybody else on the Cyber Exchange board, I want to thank the Kaspersky team for their support. You're empowering cybersecurity conversations. You're realizing jobs for students as well in the production spaces of cybersecurity. So thank you so much for what you do. To our audience, I'll be seeing you next week for another power hour, and after that for another bunch of power hours. Here are my top 2 lessons from today's session. Number 1, the more you learn, the more you earn. Simply because the more you know, the more then you're able to act on. And I think you've got that from the Kaspersky team really well. Cybersecurity begins at the home, and I think this is something we really need to take to heart. We'll be dissecting more of that at the Canadian Women in Cybersecurity Conference. And the other thing, and I'll close with this line because that's my mic drop for the day, although it'll be corny, is that the key to your cybersecurity safety is the Kaspersky. I'm sure that probably hit you all the wrong way, but I thought it made a lot of sense. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. Stay safe, and if you're in Canada, enjoy Family Day weekend. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll be seeing you next week for another Power Hour and the Canadian Women in Cybersecurity Conference. Take care. Cheers, everybody. Thanks, gentlemen.